if you are bootstrapped, you can run a very profitable business, and there's only so bad that it can get. If you sell to B2B revenue people, I think it's definitely worthy of exploring whether or not you can make this work for you, because I'm just living in it. One of the reasons that I advocate for bootstrapping is if you have this happen to you and you've taken a lot of venture capital, you're in a huge pickle, right? Today, I'm going to be talking about this journey that I've made with my coworkers, bootstrapping 22 million ARR, and kind of some of the ups and downs of it. This has been the story of my entrepreneurial journey. So I typically start off and I say, like, how many people have been stuck, right? And then it's this half asleep crowd, so like 2 people raise their hand, and I'm like, how many people have been stuck and then gotten unstuck? How many of you are stuck right now? And I'm leaving my hand up because in many ways, like, I'm stuck now. And before this retention.com thing, Robley, our prior startup, was stuck at 3 million ARR for 4 years, which is a long time to get stuck. And it leads you to feel a few things. One is like this is what I felt, at least, like this desperation for any information from anybody that was ahead of me, about how I move my business forward. And, nothing ever worked, right? That led to like a frustration. Somebody'd show up with, who ran Facebook ads or whatever. They're like, I can make Facebook ads run for you. Nothing would work. And then also it was like this feeling of inadequacy. Like, I'm a 3 million ARR guy. I don't know if I have it in me to grow past that. And, to a large extent, I'm feeling the same thing right now, right? It's 22 million ARR. Like, it's the biggest company I've ever gotten. I don't know if I have it within me to go beyond that. So, anyway, that's what this presentation is all about. And I'm going to just talk about, basically what we did to get from 0 to 1, 1 to 10, and then sort of the next phase, and then why we got into this B2B stuff, and a little about this LinkedIn co-create, which in a future week, I'll do like a much deeper dive into. So this slide looks really good. It looks up and to the right. If you look a little bit closer on this slide, you'll see that from Q2 20 to the end of Q1 21, which is 9 months, we barely grew, and we were actually down revenue quarter over quarter. At that point, I thought this business was stuck. I thought it was only a 3 million ARR business. Again, I was experiencing all of the same emotions that I was with my last company. I was ready to give up on the thing. I was trying to figure other stuff out. And that's just been the story of this business. It's like, if you're a SaaS person, you're like, well, how does this happen in SaaS? That's not really the nature of SaaS. This product, which is retention.com, and before we called it retention.com, it was get emails. It's just always been super high churn, and it still is, which is kind of what we're dealing with right now. It's like, for a lot of reasons, I thought that, over the last 18 months, we like grew the staff a lot. We honed in on an ICP. I thought it would fix this churn problem, and it didn't. And this can happen to you. But as I heard this guy say one time, it's like, with these businesses, you're kind of always trying to do these things to like kind of stay in front of churn a little bit. And I'll just take you on the journey real quick. But the point of this slide is, like, even within this journey, I'm counting 3 different times that I've been stuck and like totally down and out on this whole thing. So that's been my experience of being an entrepreneur. I think that's probably similar to most other people's journey. And one of the reasons that I advocate for bootstrapping is if you have this happen to you and you've taken a lot of venture capital, you're in a huge, huge pickle, right? If you have this happen to you and you're bootstrapped and profitable, there's kind of only so bad that it gets. So, I'll elaborate a little more as we go on. So 0 to 1 for us. And I actually pulled this link, and I can drop it in the chat. Where is my chat window here? So it was all about Facebook ads. I did this really kind of hilarious and inflammatory Facebook ad campaign. And you can find it on the retention.com. Actually, there's a QR code there, so you can just scan it with your phone. But if you go to the video page on retention.com YouTube page and scroll all the way down, you'll see what I'm talking about. And the idea here was like, I was walking around, Snap just came out, Instagram stories came out. And long story short, I was like, man, like, this kind of looks like a new way of communicating. What if I can make a 60-second ad that basically answered the sales questions of our company? And it was amusing, and there was a different background every time. If I got people anticipating the ad, then I would have won the game. And uh, I think as many of you who have done Facebook ads to try to sell a SaaS would agree with, it was not a way to get good long-term customers. They were unbelievably high churn. But what it did do was it created an unbelievable amount of awareness for us. It made me realize that, basically we spent $5,000 on ads the first month and got 10K MRR. It was super high churn MRR, but it still was like this fantastic indicator of like the first part of product market fit. And it made me realize that the offer is like the most important thing. We were showing up in front of people that had never heard of this thing that Get Emails did, which is like, somebody can hit your website, we can resolve it to a deliverable email address without that person filling out a form. And they were immediately interested and like signed up and whatever. The other thing about these ads was, it's kind of like a very privacy sensitive thing that we do. And I sort of realized that these social machines love this like negative stuff. So I would make these ads that were like inflammatory to privacy people who would write me a novel about how big of a scumbag I was. And then I'd actually insult them from the brand account of a company that like has not existed for longer than a couple of weeks, and get them to write another novel. And all of that negative energy really made the ads work better. And, moral of the story there is you can do aggressive and outrageous things, months into creating your company, because there's no brand to destroy. A lot of people think that there is. I really don't think there is. So I think it's all about, getting awareness the fastest way possible, kind of like no matter what it takes. And then, this Facebook journey created great awareness. It was definitely helping our cold email effort because people would see the ads, even if they weren't clicking through on Facebook. But it was absolutely terrible, sort of like the average person that was signing up coming from it. It was horrible, but it got us from 0 to 1 million in 28 weeks. And I think it's worth watching the ads just so like, kind of like what was cutting through, right? It was like this sort of outrageous stuff that kind of no one else was willing to do, which I think is the case still, kind of like why my LinkedIn does so well right now. So next, from 1 to 10, we were 6 people, and all we did, there was one salesperson with a sales assistant. She had 3 people in the Philippines that were doing lead gen half the day and sending outbound email from individual Gmail inboxes the other half the day. That was the only thing we did from 1 to 10 million. The reason that I like emphasizing that to people is because I really do believe that with the right combination of product and then just 1 or 2 channels and word of mouth, you can get way farther than you think that you can get with way fewer bodies if you just have the discipline to run your company that way. And it's hard to do. And then you end up in this pickle that we're sort of in right now and working our way through, where the only way you can do that is if you have these unbelievably productive individual contributors. The problem with that is when it actually becomes time to grow, no one knows how to manage anybody. No one knows what processes are. And that's a whole other problem that you have to solve, but you can solve it. But I just like illustrating that this is literally what we did with this group of people. And in many ways, it's it's a better situation than we're in right now. 21.5 million in revenue and 55 people, and it's just like, how do we keep everybody focused and like all of this stuff. Yeah, I just like evangelizing. Get as far as humanly possible with as few people as you can. As you can imagine, this business was unbelievably profitable. We weren't really doing any marketing. It just gives you a lot of room to do a lot of things. And then, anybody heard of this company? I'm sure that you have. So before these guys were called Jasper, they were also a group of guys from Maryland that were stuck at 2.5 million ARR. I shared an office with them for 2 years before they started this company. And like, I am not kidding you. These guys were out of money. They had just spent 1.5 years building a product that literally no one bought, and they had raised 2 million bucks. They were going to sell the business for 6, pay the investors back for 2, take the 4 million bucks, pay the taxes, and then split it among the founders and go start a restaurant. They were out. Like, this was they were going to try one more thing. And at the time, this was in the middle of one of those first revenue dips with Get Emails. So like, I had my last company, Robly, which was 3 million ARR and cash flowing. Then I had started Get Emails, which was also 3 million ARR and cash flowing, but was stuck. I didn't think it was going to grow any farther. And Get Emails was at 267K MRR. Dave's company was at like 225. Get Emails was at like 240. So, sorry, Robly was at 240. So Get Emails was the front runner in the 3 startups that we had. His goal when he started this was for it to be his Get Emails. So when he started Jasper, the dream scenario for him was 267K MRR, or like just over 3 million ARR. And we all know what happened next. 0 to 50 million ARR faster than any other startup in the history of startups. And the reason that I love telling this story is because
Nintendo.
I just don't think anyone knows how big things can be when they start. It just surprises you. And the lesson for me is keep throwing spaghetti against the wall, keep building new baskets to put your eggs in, because you just never know. Now, the sort of thing that it did to me, which was very interesting to observe, like, if I would have heard that story in a format like this, or if I would have heard that story on a podcast, I would have not felt like it directly related to me. I don't know why. Oh, geez. Sorry. We got some feedback. So I would not have thought that it directly related to me. But something about struggling with those guys for 2 years and sitting in that office made me feel like, as I watched it, I could do the same thing. Because, I don't know, previously I was like, oh, unicorns are reserved for people who went to Stanford and, venture-backed whoever's or whatever. And then you watch some guys from Maryland who were working on stuff that's just as bad as what I was working on before, who have this huge success. And you're like, maybe I could do it. And, there were some remarkable things about my business at the time too. We had gotten to 12 million ARR with 6 people. And I was like, they got to 50 million ARR, but they were spending $2 million a month on Facebook marketing. Like, what if I spent $2 million a month on sales and marketing? Maybe my business would be bigger than 50 million ARR. So, it basically, I went and found Santosh, who we'll talk about later. And then we did this very, very fast expansion from this basically skeleton team to this massive team. And, I was so confident based on the early signals that we were going to absolutely crush it, that I made a docuseries calling for 13 to 50 million ARR in 2023. And what happened? Well, we undershot by over 50%. Why? Well, the primary reason is that I've truly believed that this churn problem would be solved if we honed in on this very narrow slice of customers that loved our product more than anybody. The problem with that is it solved the churn problem a little bit, but like not a lot. And then, now we're dealing with this other problem where, the market got really competitive. People who were solving another problem started solving some of the same problems in the same way. And I realize now that, there are high churn product categories and high churn buyer personas, period. And to a certain extent, if you're selling a certain category of product, it's never going to be low churn, right? Some will always be low churn, some will never. I also learned, and I'm only now beginning to fully appreciate this. We didn't have processes. I thought I knew what the word process meant because I understand what the word process means. We have an executive coach working with 8 of our executives, and we're rolling out the Entrepreneurial operating system I now understand what having processes means. We did not have our way of doing things. And then we invited a bunch of super senior people in who had their way of doing things, and it turned into a complete mess. And then last but not least, probably the biggest mistake that I made was, when you bootstrap, you have this certain discipline. It's a way with money. It's a way of thinking about things, efficiency, all that stuff. I totally lost that, and I started behaving like a venture-backed CEO, and it was just really bad culturally, and it just led people to make horrible decisions with money. And our highly profitable company went to not profitable at all, very quickly. And public service announcement, don't make a document series and miss your number by 50%. You kind of look like a real asshole. So that is that. And then why we pivoted to B2B is the next sort of point here. We're not shrinking anymore. We actually had an up month last month, but like if you follow me on LinkedIn, we shrank 4 months in a row, and like I really didn't know when it was going to end. Probably the hardest LinkedIn post I've ever had to write was 6 weeks ago when I was like, not only are we down for the 4th month in a row, we're down more than we have been the prior 3 months. We're down 2.3%. Everything that I'm looking at suggests that this is going to continue to be incredibly difficult until we figure something else out. So that was the dynamic that we were in. But like I was saying earlier, if you are bootstrapped, you can run a very profitable business, and there's only so bad that it can get, right? Like if in like we're throwing off, 4 to 500K a month. This was January because I gave this keynote in February, but and that is a consolation prize, and I think it's a pretty good one. So why we pivoted to B2B? First of all, Santosh is on this call and he'll be answering questions. If you look at his LinkedIn, he is one of the most he's probably the most gangster guy that exists in the B2B data space. He built Apollo, he built ZimInfo. The entire time we've been building this D2C business, Santosh has been telling me, you got to sell this to B2B people. They need the leads more. The leads are more valuable. No one is doing the person level stuff. It will be more valuable than to these guys who are selling $100 pair of shoes. So that was number one. Number two, even before we decided to build this product, I had been giving so much to LinkedIn content creation, but the aim of it was these e-commerce stores. And it was doing a lot for us. It was doing a lot for me. Like the visibility for me and us in that ecosystem was tremendous. Lots of partnerships opportunity, lots of like really strong credibility with agencies and it's helping us with recruiting. It was investors were banging down the door, all of that stuff, but it wasn't booking us demos with e-com store owners or people that worked at e-com stores. And I work with this LinkedIn coach called Alec. Next week, I will explain basically the whole LinkedIn playbook that I developed. But in September, Alec was like, look, I'm like, what do you think about like seeing if we can get an audience writing about B2B stuff? He's like, dude, if you start writing about that, like we can book demos with literally anyone. So we did a big content pivot before we even started this product, and just to see like how it would do. And if you can, I mean, you just look at this page, it's like before and after is remarkable. And there's a lot of reasons for it. I can explain it. And this is 12 months in, by the way, but like I clicked into basically author to platform to audience fit. And I am my ICP, and my ICP lives on LinkedIn. So like the combination of all of that, once I started writing at B2B SaaS revenue people and founders, it was phenomenal. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but the content pivot worked. And then it started this really interesting era of a co-creation of a product with the LinkedIn audience. So if you have not read this book and you're a startup founder, I would highly recommend getting and reading this book because I think it's the best book. It's called 4 Steps to the Epiphany. The basic idea and the lean startup method basically it was a guy in Steve Blank's class and he wrote this book, The Lean Startup, says the same thing. The basic idea is this: your intuition, no matter how long you're in the game, it's just not great. It's not a great indicator of market viability. You should instead of building something, launching it, and then trying to sell it, you need to build what your product hypothesis is, but you need to be building the buyers at the same time. And it just de-risks your startup journey tremendously because two things can happen. One, when you go to launch it, you have your initial buyers already there. Number two, if you can't find anyone to buy it, you can stop building and start over again. And if you have the discipline to do that, just stopping yourself from something that was going to surely flop is a massive de-risking exercise. So what this allowed us to do is this like dream scenario, 4 steps to the epiphany journey, where while Tate was building the product, Santosh and I were on 5, 6, 7 calls per day with perfect ICP people who were basically responding to these posts as I'd like articulate, either like outbound is dead, like do this or whatever, or like, third party intent data sucks. Here's what I learned from talking to 6 Sense customers or whatever. I would put these really soft CTAs in these posts. And, we had 2,000 people on the waiting list for this product before it even started. And it just, we could talk to anybody. It was so phenomenal. And this is the example of the most killer close that drove the most action. Very simple. It was just, I used it several times on sort of related posts. And then people DM, and if they were above a certain threshold, we put them on a phone, we give them a Calendly link. If they're below a certain threshold, we just like put them into put them in the waiting list. So now the interesting thing, so originally I was like, okay, it's going to be a high churn product category. Let's at least try to have a lower churn buyer persona. So I was thinking, rarely can startups start by trying to sell to the mid-market, but the content has created such brand and such trust that we'll be able to in this regard. But the content started working so well that I was like, man, I think this outbound stuff is like torched a little bit. Like it just seems like the wrong thing to do to try to do a sales-led motion. I got smoked on it last year and like whatever else. And if I have a free offer with this megaphone that I have, it's going to give me the benefit of scale that a sales-led motion would not. And the free offer is going to help someone who has a big megaphone way more than a free offer would help someone who does not. So it's kind of like the platform and the megaphone and the product, it's like was informing each other as the process went along. And it's just like this amazing thing that I still can't believe is happening. So to wrap it up, I went over how we bootstrapped 22 million ARR in 48 months, why we pivoted to B2B, and how I co-created this product with my LinkedIn audience. And I love wrapping it up by saying this. If you take nothing else, take these 3 things. You are not stuck. It just feels like you are. Keep throwing spaghetti against the wall. And you do have what it takes to create a bigger SaaS. So that is it. And we will open it up for questions. I will unshare my screen. We can talk about anything you want, not necessarily this topic if it's not what everyone wants to talk about. So hold on, I'm sorry. Stop share. Boom. Okay, Pete, have you been watching these comments at all?
I have, yeah. We have one question at the top here. So, what do you consider a high churn percentage and a low churn percentage? Luca asked that, just looking for a little benchmark there.
Yeah, so like I think it's all about who you are serving. And so like there are benchmarks everywhere. Like I think Bessemer's got some benchmarks, Lemkin has some benchmarks. SMB, I think really good for SMB is like once they pay you, it's a couple percentage churn per month. And then like Klaviyo is in one of the lowest product churn categories. We have the benefit of seeing some of their metrics as they went public. They have like an 88% gross revenue retention, which is phenomenal for SMB. Usually it's like 70. And then they actually get the people that don't churn to pay them like 50 or 100% more in a given year. And they have like a 120 net revenue expansion. So net revenue expansion is like, if you get $1 in the door, how many dollars are there 12 months later? That's the dream scenario where your book just accretes on itself. I've never been in a situation like that. Ours is kind of the opposite. So like, I would say for SMB, like this product we sell right now, I don't even know what the metrics are because we do this paid trial and it's all mixed in bare metrics, but it's like, you know, if you mix the trial in, it's 5 to 6% per month. If you take the trial out, it's probably, 4% per month. And I think that's the best we're going to do with this product, because at the end of the day, like, if you're quitting Klaviyo as an e-com store, you're quitting for one reason. Like, you're going, either you went out of business or you're going to go use another email marketing app, because it is the source of truth. It is a data warehouse. It's a system of record. But like, the other end of the spectrum is what we do, which is we sell leads as a SaaS. There's just 10 reasons why someone would stop using your leads that have nothing to do with, you. It's like the new employee shows up, there's like, I don't know what these are. Like, I'm not making ROI. Like, I'm not this, I'm not that. Like, and the only thing that changed about their business is that they're not getting the leads anymore. And yeah, some people make money on the leads, but some people are happy not making money on the leads, So yeah, I have heard that logo churn for enterprise, which is like totally the other end of the spectrum. I've never sold an enterprise product, is like 2% per year, right? Because these guys are buying things that they plan to use for 10 years, and it's an entire land and expand strategy. And like, in average revenue expansion for enterprise is like 130, 140, something like that. And the great companies are like 180. And then mid-market is literally just like split the uprights halfway between. Yeah.
Cool. Good, thorough. So make sure you look at kind of what's benchmarked within your product category. So we have one that we got 3 likes on. How important is G2? Should we drive G2 reviews? This is timely for us, Adam.
Yeah, like Pete has a really compelling opinion of what G2 is.
Sure.
So
Oh yeah.
yeah, I would like you to answer that question, and I'll fill in, because I think you answer it well, and I'll fill in anything that I feel like you.
Okay, so G2 wants all of us to believe that they are a marketplace for businesses to discover services that they might want to use for their business. I'm not so sure that's the case. What I do know for sure is we at RB2B want there to be something there when somebody Googles RB2B reviews, where we want a sort of repository of positive feedback. We want some social proof from a few hundred folks. And now we actually have those reviews live streaming over to our website. So we're paying for it right now. I don't know how long we'll pay for it. We want to get to a few hundred reviews, and then we might de-emphasize kind of how much money we're spending with G2. But up in the air for us whether or not it's a good marketplace for people to discover services like ours.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, basically, I believe what Pete believes. There's like, especially in the beginning, there's like a certain legitimacy threshold that I think you need to check off across the board. It's like your website needs to look good, not great. You need to have a certain amount of reviews strewn across the internet. But like, I don't know, especially for SMB, like, I've bought leads from G2 before and they've been terrible. Like, so yeah,
Yeah,
basically
if I can
yeah, Santosh, what's up?
add something quickly on reviews in general, right? So a lot of these review sites, these reviews are getting gamed. So I would suggest, a better social proof is the kind of content like Adam is writing, right? So if you can write content to drive trust, that works so much better than stressing over getting additional reviews on these review sites.
Thank you, Santosh.
Perfect. So we have another one. This one got a few likes. So I think it says, so I think the hardest part is getting the first 1 million in MRR. Can you clarify how you achieve this? It wasn't clear to me.
Yeah, so like, let me just like, here's my view on product market fit in general. If you have decent product market fit, good enough to where there's some very strong word of mouth, you can do a lot of different things to accelerate that word of mouth. If you do not yet have word of mouth, nothing that you do will work. So, and like, I kind of get shit when I say that sometimes because people are like, well, I mean, that's like saying I want to be a model, so I got to go be beautiful. It's like, I don't know what else to say. Like, this is the game that we're playing these days. If you can get word of mouth going for what you're doing, there are a million ways to accelerate it. If you cannot, all of these ways that are working for other people to accelerate it will not work for you. So step one was just having a product that really had this wow to it and that people were talking about when we used it. And then step two, or when we sold it to them. And then step two, 0 to 1, was that Facebook ad campaign that that I mentioned. That was literally, we were doing some cold emailing, but like this was what did it. And I'll drop it in the chat. So you can see all of the ads at the bottom of that page. I'm going to drop it in LinkedIn too. And it it was wild. Some of my LinkedIn stuff is too. It's like, how are you gonna break through the noise, right? It's like you got to do stuff that no one else is doing, I think. And that was, I think, a pretty good example of it. They were outrageous ads, and they were cringe, and they got a lot of attention. And then, yeah, 1 to 10 was just super small squad, really good base word of mouth going, and cold email done out of the Philippines. Inbound, 15-minute demo, 1 call close. But it's a simple product at that time. Right now, it's much more complicated.
Cool. We got a couple other questions too about how you identify audience fit and what they engage with, what they respond to well. I think that piggybacks kind of into that previous question.
So can we clarify that?
Yeah,
what does
Oliver,
that
did
mean?
you wanna...
Audience fit on what? For content or for like the SaaS product?
Hey, Adam. Nice to long-time listener, first-time caller here. So really
Hey,
appreciate
thanks,
what you've
man.
done, and I'm a happy customer as well. So yeah, the question was basically, how did you identify your audience on LinkedIn and the content that would resonate with those people in order to book subsequent meetings? Like I see a lot of noise out there,
Dude,
and it's really hard to break through that noise. And so I'm just wondering how you cut through that way.
Okay, so the detailed answer is right there, and I'm going to give this presentation next week. The short answer is, I'm dropping it in LinkedIn too. The short answer is, if you guys know who Devin Reed is, this is a Devin Reed term. It took me 12 months to find content market fit. I don't know how else to say it. I wish it was easier than that. A lot of people who I've talked to who actually have content market fit say that it also took them 12 months or a little longer. So, yeah, man, I just found my voice over the course of 12 months. And the big unlock for me was after really honing my skills and it not having much of a business impact for the e-com side. When we decided to actually write stuff about my horrible sales journey through 2023 as a SaaS founder and revenue leader who like expanded a Salesforce way too hard, contracted it, like all the not, all these struggles with like thinking there was going to be a unicorn and it not or whatever. It just really resonated with people because no one else is sitting there saying that they're down 4 months in a row, right? But like a lot of people are. So I agree with you. There's a lot of noise out there. And I don't know how else to do it other than keep throwing spaghetti against the wall. What I will say is like, what I wanted before I had found my content market fit was I wanted to be able to take like a Justin Welch style spreadsheet and just list my content pillars and just do exactly what he says. Like go do a different type of content for each of the like whatever. So Alec told me, and I think Alec is right about this. He's my LinkedIn consultant. He said, you figure that stuff out as you go along. Like it is not a thing that you know in advance. And I now agree with that. It's like, and you'll see in those slides, like literally it was like, okay, like I'm going to write about B2B stuff now. And like the first post, it was like, holy shit, like this is like got 100 times the engagement of anything else I've basically ever written. And then I wrote 3 more posts and they all crushed. And it's like, okay, I get this now. But it's like the perfect match between, you know, all of a sudden, instead of me trying to connect with an e-commerce founder, which I am not, and I was just talking about more broad business issues, it was like me talking to a SaaS founder who I am, and you know, I've had this said to me, like articulating a very unique type of pain incredibly clearly that you could not articulate unless you were one of them, right? So, yeah, I mean, other than just, and there's some basic, I would say, technical things like, so one point of view is you join engagement circles, you get people with large followings to comment on your posts, and you like, you know, get an audience that way. I don't do any of that. I did when we started. Alex's belief is you write the best hook that you possibly can, you write the best body that you can, and then you wrap it up with this killer close, which like gives people a dopamine hit and, you know, provokes them to engage. And you can look at, you know, who do I like to look at for headlines? It's like Chris Walker. I don't know. This guy, Nigel Thomas, uses templates really well. So like there's a list format that I like to use a lot. Yeah, I would just look at other people who are kind of killing the game and try to figure out why you think that they're killing the game.
Adam, if I can ask a follow-up. So
Yeah.
you're doing this for pure awareness because like if I think of myself, I saw you through these LinkedIn posts, right? And so to an extent you got in front of me, but at the same time, if you hit me with an email that says, "Hey, I'll deliver visitors to your website, I'll deliver you their email domain, their LinkedIn, et cetera, for free, and I'll push it to your Slack," I would have responded yes anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so yes, that is true.
Because your offer was good, right?
The offer is great, right? Like, I don't think that I would be standing in. So one thing I would say is like, all of this has happened very quickly. You know, I want like I had like 15,000 followers in the e-com space like last July, right? Like all of a sudden it's like this very different thing. I would not be standing in front of you today had this not happened. And I think that part of it is that we have this insanely good offer on the product side. And it like plays really well with the content. They sort of play off of each other. And look, like I agree with you. You might have said yes to that, but like I think a lot of people, if they got that email and they didn't know who I was, a lot fewer people would have said yes. Like it's still a great offer, but like, what am I trying to say? Like, so Dave
100%.
Cancel, do you guys know who Dave Cancel is? He was the founder of Drift. He's like one of my favorite founders. So there's this great podcast that he was on this like late last year. You should go listen to it. It's these guys in Connecticut who interview people. Dave's an amazing guy. He was like, he's basically like, when we started Drift, he's like, it was so like HubSpot was basically business model innovation. It was like there was Salesforce and we made a free CRM effectively. It was like the sort of one-liner for HubSpot. Then by the time they started Drift, there were 600 chatbot apps. Think about that, right? Like that shit's not new. So he was like, he viewed it as a brand opportunity, which was why they invested so heavily in that badass brand that they had. And from day one, I like noticed that. I was like, man, the same brand that is captivating me, who's not even like a potential customer, it's definitely intoxicating customers and investors and future acquirers and everybody else with the same kind of power. And if you ask me why I think this LinkedIn stuff is so important now, I think that what we're doing on LinkedIn, Santosh and I, and Pete's getting involved or whatever else, like that's today's Drift. It's in a world like people are going to copy our B2B, they're going to build everything we build, but it's like they can't, you know, the trust that gets built through this incredible mechanism, like I'm not sure that it can be emulated very easily. You know, maybe part of the reason why is like I am who I am with my experience. I'm willing to say what I'm willing to say. Santosh is even way more experienced, and he's willing to share a lot of stuff. And like, we also have the resources to where we can take the time to try to be the best at it, which it's so hard and it takes so much of your life to try to do that. And most people who start startups can't, right? So like it's kind of an unfair advantage of having this other business cash flowing like crazy, that like we can dedicate an insane amount of resources to basically giving our product away and like trying to create this like, you know, bulletproof megaphone to yell about it. So that was a mega ramble, but it's just that's my answer basically.
Cool. Appreciate that, and Oliver. So a question that sort of dovetails into this: what channels do you think are best for getting to that 1 million ARR when targeting that higher end e-com brand founder retention goes after?
Oh man. Yeah.
I can give a quick preface to this, Adam, if you want.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. So as Adam and Oliver's discussion just alluded to, we're using two primary marketing channels for our B2B. We're using community building, all of our LinkedIn efforts, and then we're using product-led growth. Most of our users do not pay us. So I do want to refer, this was Pete Q who asked this question. There is a book that talks about all of the different marketing channels you can go after. It was written by the guy who founded DuckDuckGo. He had to go up against Google and created a successful niche from there. Screenshot this, read this book. This will answer all those questions about which marketing channels you should use. It's by Gabriel Weinberg. So the channels that work for us may not work for you, vice versa. It all depends on what you're selling, who you're selling to, you know, your goals, what stage you're at. There's so many factors here, but I'll let Adam piggyback if he would like to.
Yeah. So for e-commerce, which again, we have these two totally distinct businesses. One is retention.com. We sell only to e-commerce stores. Our B2B is only to SaaS revenue teams. So like when we're talking about 0 to 1 million, you're really like, I view this as like nothing else matters other than me getting feedback on this product. Like it's kind of like not a race to 1 million. It's a race to as much feedback as humanly possible. And yeah, man, I might use Facebook ads again, to be honest. Just they kind of work. I don't know if there's still a Shopify interest group or not. Like maybe Twitter ads, maybe. So if you're a bit further along than 1 million, like, you know, 3 to 5 million, I think the way to do it with the high end Shopify guys, like, you know, I think the way to do it with them is there's this whole kind of like influencer partner motion that's like almost all of our go-to-market right now. You can basically get involved with these guys that bring brands to dinners and you can talk to them and, you know, you pay them and all that stuff. But with just initial awareness, I mean, if I were starting from zero, I'd probably try to run some ads on Twitter and Facebook. And I might even try to do this. Some people who are crushing it with the work in public stuff. If you're asking about Shopify, then you may know this guy, Nick Shackelford. Like he launched this beverage company called Brez, which is like a CBD drink. And he's doing what I'm doing in SaaS, but for e-com. And it's really helping him. You know, it's just, it seems counterintuitive or something, but like he's getting a ton of visibility from just like doing all this like revenue reporting about how he's crushing and all that stuff, everything he's doing. So yeah. But he's been posting on Twitter forever too. He's got 45, 50,000 followers. So it's kind of a chicken and egg problem in many ways in that regard.
Awesome. We have one question. I think this really goes into a strategy we're using here at RB2B. How would you combine cold email with founder-led marketing? You want to take them through a little bit of what we're doing there?
Yeah. Um, so one thing that I believe is that the biggest determinant of an open rate of an email is who sends it. Not necessarily even the subject line. So another reason why all this like kind of brand marketing I think is so important is because it will make anything, it's kind of like those Facebook ads. It like created so much awareness that it like made our cold email work better, but we couldn't measure it. And but like I view it as very hand in hand. I mean, we're getting like direct response results from this LinkedIn thing, but I, I don't think about it like that. Like I don't think about it as you know, we are spending this amount of time and energy and money on founder brand, and we, you know, if we book 30 demos this month or get X signups, then it was worth it. And if we didn't, it wasn't worth it. Like it's literally just like, this is how we are going to win in the long run. And it is making everything else work better for sure. And it's a nonlinear growth thing. And regardless of what comes from it, we're going to keep doing it. Like, it's this irrational commitment to it. So I mean, I think it's hand in hand. Like, this guy, Eric Sue, who doesn't do a lot of outbound, he's got this agency called Single Grain. He's got a big marketing podcast with Neil Patel. He was talking to me about this, and they weren't able to book them. So one thing we found is that like, if you can book an outbound demo with RB2B, you're very likely to be successful by just doing the same thing. If you filter down your ICP and then, you know, do the same thing you're doing. If you don't know how to book a demo, then what do you need more leads for? That's not your problem. Like, you need to learn how to book a demo first. And Eric had never booked an outbound demo. So like, we're talking about this whole process. I'm like, wait, like, we're not having a conversation about what to do with RB2B. We're like having a conversation about sales. Like, he's like, yeah, like, I'm like, how many outbound demos you ever booked? He's like, 0. So I'm like, who are you sending him from? He's like, this guy who's sitting in Brazil, you know, Paulo or whatever. So I'm like, dude, like you're like a famous business guy. Like, send them from you, you know? So that is kind of an example of how I think about this. Like, and the value of these big LinkedIn profiles that are like really creating this type of familiarity, which is like incredibly deep connection and like understanding of kind of how people think. It's, to me, it's making people feel like they're my friend. And I'm trying to lean into that, because if you have an ever-growing pool of that, then everything you do will work better that is related to that thing. Another thing we're seeing, which is not necessarily cold email, like, we're using this profile as part of our PLG. Basically, if like a very valuable person signs up and they don't install the script, based upon how they profile, we'll either put them on the phone with Pete if it's a certain profile, or like Sean if it's enterprise, or Santosh or whatever. And people are equally likely to show up for a call booked through my profile if it's someone else than if it was me, which is like, that's incredible, right? Because you know, it's just an amazing thing. Again, I will say, it's this magic thing because our audience is on LinkedIn and I am the ICP and like all of that, right? Not everybody's going to get it to work this way, but if you sell to B2B revenue people, I think it's definitely worthy of exploring whether or not you can make this work for you, because I'm just living it. It's like, it's just super valuable, you know?
And the person sending the email does not need to be the person that's going on the calls. We have emails that are booked through Adam who go to me or have gone to Santosh or some other people here. And it honestly just need to get brought up in conversation. Like, where's Adam? I think maybe one person asked, but we're getting a couple questions about, have you tried Google ads? Would Facebook ads work for my business? Maybe. I mean, for any of these channels, guys, run a tight experiment, try to spend as little money as possible, try to have goals within a defined period of time, and just experiment. It's really hard for us to be like, yeah, Facebook ads will work for your business without digging further. We got a couple questions about the Philippines. So how did you find the right people in the Philippines, and how did you manage them?
So this is just like a Diana, my co-founder, had been working with this guy, Jim, forever. And Jim was great, but like they were not answering emails, if that made sense. She'd just give them instruction. So Diana had some kind of like gut feel crazy beliefs. She's basically like, if everybody's, and this is non-scientific, and I think Pete actually did an experiment one time to disprove this, but she's like, if everybody's using Apollo and Zoom Info emails, it's not going to work. So she had people finding alternate emails just by going to the internet for people that were not in Zoom and Zoom Info and Apollo. And then she's like, if everybody's using Outreach and Sales Left, that's not going to work either. And she had people manually sending from Gmail. She found this guy, Jim. They could follow instructions. He could follow instructions. Jim had a couple cousins. That's how it worked for us. I know some people who have had success dealing with like agencies in the Philippines and like doing sort of like a hiring process, like a VA style. How do I say this in the right way? Like, we are not this team, they're not like we're not treating them like we're basically treating them like they're doing very mechanical things. They are not, there is no, we're not treating them like employees. We're not treating them like freelancers. The process right now does not allow for any independent sort of interpretation on their end. I have a friend named Stuart Cheney who has a Shopify app, and the whole game with Shopify apps is getting as many reviews as possible. He has 40 people in the Philippines doing incredibly sophisticated things, basically like helping people onboard and building up basically like personal affinity between the rep in the Philippines and the customer. And at the end of it, they asked for a review and it gets like a 30% fill on the review for the Shopify store. That is managing a team of people, which is like quite different than how we're doing it. And he finds people on onlinejobs.ph. Yeah, onlinejobs.ph. My experience, I've done a lot of overseas stuff before. They are people just like we are people. They're employees just like, your employees in the States would be. If you get quite a few of them over there, then you're probably going to need a manager over there. There's this other weird chicken and egg. It's like, well, do I start with who's going to be my manager or do I find the manager later? It's like, I don't have a great answer for that. But if you just want to get Stuart's suggestion to me, because we were thinking about doing something like what he was doing. He was like, just find one person. And he had like kind of like this profile that he was looking for. And he's like, well, he actually said, have someone in the States figure it out first, and then have a very detailed playbook. Then find someone who fits this profile and have them doing it alongside with you for a while, and then try to nail it down, and then slowly build that team out. So that's what I would say about that. I don't think anyone's going to find Jim is the problem. There's only kind of one Jim. And like, honestly, if we had to do it over again, like, I think I would try to like find kind of like people who would contribute more value than just literally like ticking off checkboxes or whatever. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I've done it in the past too for just other more administrative, repetitive things. It's a much cheaper way to run that. And yeah, it can be great. Last call for questions. I just threw it in the chat. Are there any that I missed too? I tried to address everything.
There's some in
in LinkedIn.
Yeah, there's a ton in LinkedIn. I probably should go to this too.
I'll do both next week. So sorry, LinkedIn.
Yeah, for a bootstrap B2B SaaS company, do you have recommendations on raising capital versus dilution via VC? So I assume this question means like using venture debt, or like one of these like Nathan Lotka's got Founder Path or whatever. I mean, it's all scary to me. What I would say is, so long as you can not take someone else's money and it sort of works, like I would rather shrink my team than like take someone else's money and then be, because you sell a set of expectations. And usually when you're raising money, that expectations is rosier than the reality that will likely play out because you're raising money. How do you raise money? You paint a beautiful picture. I mean, VC is tough because I don't know, we can get into that whole debate, but like, I don't know. I was looking at these venture debt terms, a year and a half ago when we were thinking about, doing a founder buyout of my co-founder. It's just like kind of a deal with the devil. Like if everything goes incredibly well, you're in a great spot. If a couple things don't go well, then like, man, if I would have done it, I would be up Schitt's Creek right now with kind of what happened versus what I thought would happen versus changes in the capital markets, at the time we were looking at it versus how they are now. It's just tough. So I don't have a great opinion on any of that stuff. I think it can be highly situational. My instinct is to just get smaller and try to figure out how to be more efficient. I think there's an old way and a new way of starting startups. It's happening right now.
So let's get into when is it actually right for you?
You happen to have a large organic social media presence in your target market is relatively far more attractive than if you do not have that.
When your product sells itself, it scales way easier.